Welcome back to Time with God series, Joyce Meyer's Everyday Bible Journey for Busy Moms. We are picking back up at Genesis chapter 38. I'm WendyMichelle Thompson. At that time, Judah withdrew from his brothers and went to lodge with a certain Adullamite named Hira. Verse 2. There Judah saw and met a daughter of Shua, a Canaanite. He took her as a wife and lived with her. And she became pregnant and bore a son, and he called him just Er. And she conceived again and bore a son and named him Onan. Verse 5. Again she conceived and bore a son and named him Shelah. They were living at Shezib, where she bore him. Now Judah took a wife for his firstborn. Her name was Tamar. And Judah's firstborn, was wicked in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord slew him. Then Judah told Onan, marry your brother's widow, live with her, and raise offspring for your brother. But Onan knew that the family would not be his. Verse 9. But Onan knew that the family would not be his. So when he cohabitated with his brother's widow, he prevented conception, lest he should raise up a child for his brother. And the thing which he did displeased the Lord. Therefore he slew him also. So basically, God has always said, be fruitful and multiply. Procreate. That means having sexual relations, being intimate with your wives as husband and man would be, and to keep from getting her pregnant, he let his seed spill. Basically, he did not let his seed go into his wife, but let it onto the ground. And that very much displeased God, because that was wasted seed, and God wanted everything to continue on and procreate. Verse 11. Then Judah said to Tamar, his daughter-in-law, remain a widow at your father's house till Shelah, my youngest son, is grown. For he thought, lest perhaps if Shelah should marry her, he would die also, as his brothers did. So Tamar went and lived in her father's house. But later, Judah's wife, the daughter of Shua, died. And when Judah was comforted, he went up to his sheep shearers at Timnath with his friend Hira the Adullamite. Then it was told Tamar, listen, your father-in-law is going up to Timnath to shear his sheep. So she put off her widow's garments and covered herself with a veil, wrapped herself up in disguise, and sat in the entrance of Enaim, which is by the road to Timnath, for she saw that Shelah was grown, and she was not given to him as his wife. Verse 15. When Judah saw her, he thought she was a harlot or devoted prostitute under a vow to her goddess, for she had covered her face as such women did in the time. Verse 16. he turned to her by the road and said, "Come, let me have intercourse with you." For he did not know that she was his daughter-in-law. And she said, "What will you give me that you may have intercourse with me?" He answered, "I will send you a kid from the flock." And she said, "Will you give me a pledge," meaning a deposit, "until you send it?" And he said, "What pledge shall I give you?" She said, "Your signet," which is seal, "your signet cord, and your staff that is in your hand." And he gave them to her, and came into her, and she became pregnant by him. And she arose and went away, and laid aside her veil, and put on the garments of her widowhood. Verse 20. And Judah sent the kid by the hand of his friend the Adullamite to receive his pledge from the woman's hand, but he was unable to find her. He asked the men of that place, "Where is the harlot or cult prostitute who was openly by the roadside?" They said, "There was no harlot or temple prostitute here." So he returned to Judah and said, "I cannot find her." And also the local man said, "There was no harlot or temple prostitute around here." And Judah said, "Let her keep the pledge articles for herself, lest we be made ashamed. I sent this kid, but you have not found her." But about 3 months later, Judah was told, "Tamar, your daughter-in-law, has played the harlot, and also she is with child by her lewdness." And Judah said, "Bring her forth, and let her be burned." Verse 25. When she was brought forth, she took the things he had given her in pledge, and sent them to her father-in-law, saying, "I am with child by the man to whom these articles belong." Then she added, "Make out clearly, I pray you, to whom these belong, the signet, seal, signet cord, and staff." And Judah acknowledged them and said, "She has been more righteous and just than I, because I did not give her to Shelah my son, and he did not cohabit with her again." Now when the time came for her to be delivered, behold, there were twins in her womb, the second set of twins. And when she was in labor, one baby put out his hand, and the midwife took his hand and bound upon it a scarlet thread, saying, "This baby was born first." But he drew back his hand, and behold, his brother was born first. And she said, "What a breaking forth you have made for yourself." Therefore his name was called Perez, which means breaking forth. And afterward his brother, who had the scarlet thread on his hand, was born, and was named Zerah, meaning scarlet. And that concludes Genesis chapter 38. God bless you today and all your tomorrows.